Ahí están. Ya, es porque ahora hice el más rico. Muy bien. Ok, bien, la veía, miren. Luego me va a preguntar si quiero guardar. Ok, está muy bien. Ok. Hola, Ensenada, en Tijuana, ¿cómo están?
Muy bien, gracias. Buenas tardes.
¿Quién habla allí? ¿Antonio?
Soy Antonio Michel en Ensenada.
Ok. ¿Allí está también Michelle?
Excuse me.
¿Quién está allí también contigo?
Estoy esperando que lleguen nuestros dos alumnos. Estoy solito.
Ok, Antonio. La vez pasada tuvimos a quién allí.
Michelle Rodríguez.
Eso. Y la primera vez tuvimos a Daniela.
Sí, Daniela es un drop-off. Y en
Ok.
su lugar, Irving, no te he mandado el apellido, ¿verdad? Irving va a ser equipo con Michelle. ¿No te enviaron la tarea? Es que no se han comunicado conmigo, pero tenían que haberte enviado una tarea ayer, ¿verdad?
Sí, hoy antes de la clase.
Ok, y sí, yo les había pedido que me dejaran ver la tarea ayer, pero no sé si no me localizaron, qué fue lo que pasó.
No, solo tengo de Rafael y de Evelyn.
Ok, bueno, pues los esperamos. Bueno, digo, empieza con la clase y espero que lleguen. No me han informado nada.
Entonces sería, ¿cómo se llama la persona?
Eh, Irving, déjame buscar el correo electrónico. Es Irving y la otra es Michelle Rodríguez.
Irwin con I-R-W-I-N. Irwin.
Creo que es IRV labio dental ING.
De la bidental es la de
La
voz.
B le dicen, ¿verdad?
¿B de cuál?
Es IRV de vaca ING.
Ok.
Y se apellida Guzmán.
Está bien. Cualquiera está bien. Ok. Ok. Irving. Irving. Ok.
Sí, está por llegar.
Aquí también tengo a Tijuana. ¿Quién está en Tijuana?
Buenas tardes, doctor. Habla Ricardo Guerra.
Ricardo Guerra. ¿Y tú eres profesor o estudiante?
Soy el profesor de enlace.
Ah, ok, Ricardo Guerra, ok.
Se supone que, bueno, la semana pasada tuve alguna dificultad para entrar a tiempo. Me uní
Ok.
tarde a la transmisión, perdón. Y estoy esperando que llegue el alumno.
Ok. ¿Tendrías un alumno ahí?
La idea es que sí.
Ok.
Nada más que estoy esperando que llegue. Le pasé la información del curso, le pasé los horarios, pero no me ha respondido al correo. Y le dije dónde ubicarse el día de hoy, pero no ha llegado. Espero que en breve llegue.
Ok, ok, Ricardo. Está bien. Pues ya veremos si llega la persona. Porque ya se está haciendo como tarde, ¿no? Para las personas que quieren entrar, que ya hay varias cosas. Hay tareas, hoy va a haber otra tarea y la otra semana van a haber más cosas. Así que yo creo que estás terminando la ventana para que la gente pueda participar del curso, porque después va a ser un poco más complicado, ¿no?
Sí, de acuerdo, completamente de acuerdo.
Pero está bien, me agrada, mano, que tengamos ahí gente de Tijuana también. Claro.
Gracias.
Ok, aquí llegaron ya varios alumnos, pero todavía faltan como la mitad. Así que vamos a esperar un momento. ¿Está bien? ¿Ustedes pueden ver la pantalla? ¿Están viendo el título que está en la pantalla?
Sí,
En Tijuana lo vemos.
Ok,
acá en Ensenada también.
ok, entonces estamos bien ahí. Ok,
Sí, sí.
entonces voy a esperar un momento mientras llegan más estudiantes entonces, para empezar la clase. ¿Está bien? ¿Cómo están? Bien. ¿Y usted fue el que me envió la tarea por correo?
Pero no mínimo a veces que puede ser
Sí, sí, lo que va a recibir los correos recibidos de la misma persona.
sí, es que
¿Quieres que lo prepare?
sí, no me salía a mí que se mandaba. Lo mandé de correo o ese y no me salía que lo había enviado. Y lo envié por nuestro correo y ya ese me salió.
Sí, 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 sí.
¿Nomás está el dueño este que está aquí o hay más?
No sé,
Porque sí, pero está
puede hacerlo. Por ese servicio no sé. Tengo mucho nombre aquí. No sé dónde más hay. Creo que al frente hay un
no he entrado.
Checa por ahí a ver. Qué bueno. ¿Qué tal? Oye, bien. Hablé con Tijuana. Allí hay una lista. Ah, sí. Ah, perfecto. Estaba esperando. Sí. Pues estaba pidiendo confirmación para nos avisar. Pero sí ya se conectaron. Sí, ya se conectaron. No sé nada también. Ah, perfecto. Perfecto. Me comentaron unos muchachos que de aquí de México, que a lo mejor va a ser más temprano que me alcanzan. ¿No? ¿Quieres un poco, verdad?
Yo y Rafael tenemos clase a las 4 de balance.
Sí nos dejan llegar un poco tarde, pero dice que...
Pues la línea y luego para encontrar estacionamiento en la hora.
¿Con cuánto tiempo tendré que ir? A las 3:30.
Más o menos.
Lo que les dije es que no había problema si seguimos grabando los videos. Pero no se pusieron de acuerdo que tú ibas ahora por ver y que además que... Sí, sí, también determinar a las 3:30 por varias razones. Porque como se deja estuvo grabando acá, y luego está la otra clase ahí y la grabo. Mientras grabo, demora como 40 minutos. El profesor no tiene problema, yo hablé con él y...
Sí, es lo mismo que llegamos tarde, pero pues cuando llegamos allá ya son como las 4:30, pues ya nos perdimos todo.
No, y si quería por ahí ir saliendo, a mí no me da pie para terminar la clase. Lo último que tal vez falta es poner el video.
Sí, le había dicho al equipo que vamos a verlo en el video también.
Yo ya lo subí a YouTube y ya se lo empecé a compartir en Tijuana, por ejemplo. Y nomás les paso el canal y va a estar. Sí, está en tu canal y va a estar para que ustedes puedan llegar, claro. Claro, claro.
Gracias.
Quedamos al rato de la tarde. Sí. Ok. Bueno, lo espero. Yo también espero. Y vi que Aso dijo que es más valioso, ¿no? Se anda fuera del país. Del país. Por yo. Sí, porque tienen ahí un campus. Sí, sí. No sé cuál. ¿Cómo que le dice? Yo pensé que era cogeneral. presentación, a lo mejor, pero podemos adelantarlas y demás. Ah, si quieres. Igual si quieres tener la próxima. Una parte, luego empezamos a terminar. Sí, si no lo puedes, yo sí, pero si tú puedes, sí, no, pero tenemos porque me dijeron que si hacen a las visitas, que si tenemos la agenda, bueno, que se está contemplando, pero creo que se va a pagar. A partir de ese momento, aunque depende de lo que nos digan, ¿no? Pero puede ser el tema o el historia.
Hola, profesor Jairo, ya está Michelle con nosotros.
¿Está Michelle? Ok. Gracias, Antonio. Entonces, ¿solo está Michelle? ¿No ha llegado la otra persona? Irving.
Todavía llega Irving y Michelle dice que ya te envió la tarea. Así que a lo mejor ya la tienes ahí en tu mailbox.
A ver, lo estoy viendo ahora.
Aunque le escribí a Irving, no me ha contestado todavía.
Ahora me llegó la tarea de Michelle.
Ah, muy bien. No la pude revisar previamente, pero espero que esté bien.
Para la próxima. Ahí van a venir más tareas. Ok. Ok, entonces estamos pendientes si llega Irving.
Sí.
Ok. Y en Ensenada, Ricardo, ¿ya llegó el estudiante o la estudiante?
No, el alumno no se ha aparecido. No sé si se confundió con el día o con la hora.
Sí. Con los estudiantes todo puede pasar.
Así es. Así es.
Todo es válido hasta que empiecen a trabajar. Ok, está bien, pues entonces ahí estamos pendientes, ¿ok?
Gracias.
No, aquí nos falta como la mitad del grupo. Ah, pues están los que viven acá. ¿Es qué es? ¿Ya no había? Bueno, yo creo que también vamos a tener que empezar. Déjame ver quién tengo acá de una vez. Pues tenemos a Evelyn. Vamos a Claudio.
Disculpa, profesor Jairo.
Dame un segundo. Sí, dime.
La presentación de hoy, ¿no la mandaste por correo?
No alcancé.
Ah, muy bien. Entonces,
Bueno, que me preguntas, disculpa, no. Demasiado trabajo, no alcancé a mandarla.
Ok, no, aquí la vemos.
Sí, y luego te la envío. ¿Sabes?
Gracias. Sí.
Claro. Ok. Okay, we're going to start the class. We are missing a few of the students, but we're going to move forward because there are some of the Bobis students have a class at 4 p.m. over Mexicali. So,
Irving's here now, Professor Jairo. So
thank you for letting me know.
Apparently, okay. They did the homework as a team. Michelle.
As a team? With Michelle, okay. Okay, that's good. I will review those homeworks this week and let you know.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay. So yeah, so let's gonna start the class for today. So this is our third week. Moving forward the semester. So I guess everyone is excited about it. I just wanted to share with you good news from California. Governor Brown signed yesterday a new bill that in 2045, I guess, we are going to be carbon neutral. So we have some good news, you know, about our governor, you know, moving forward this. Let's see. There you go. Let me see. So I have to share. Where is it? California. Sure. Let's see if I can share this video with you. Yeah, I'm in a class already.
I'm coming from that because I know some.
Oh, okay. Okay.
She just got it.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay.
No problem.
Okay, let's see. Can you see the video, guys?
Yes, we can see it, but we cannot hear it.
Yeah, we cannot hear it neither. So basically, Governor Brown signed this bill that in 2045, California is going to be carbon neutral. So those are good news, especially for those, you know, working on renewable energy, basically. So it's a big step, as he said, you know, in this video. It's about the goals, and that's one of the things, you know, that we discussed. Nowadays, we have a better understanding of how renewable energy can work. But it's not only about that understanding, that science, that engineering. It's also the support from the political support. So how we are going to see ourselves, you know, towards the future. So it's not only that it's going to be on the investors, on the people that have the money, on the people that have the knowledge. You know, as a society, we have to come together and work together and have these goals towards the future. And many of these things that we are moving forward is because the legislature, basically. So if our presidents and our mandatories, you know, create or sign these goals that are not aligned to what a society we want, so we are not going to reach the goals. So this is a big goal that Governor Brown in California is moving forward. So it's really, really excited time, and especially for this class, absolutely. So this is great. So let me get back to the Zoom meeting. Let's see, share, PowerPoint. I will have to do this when I get out. So Ensenada, Ensenada in Tijuana, can you see the presentation?
We are seeing now the students.
The image is the classroom, Professor.
Can you see the screen?
The screen with the mountains?
The screen that I'm showing the PowerPoint presentation. No?
Nope.
So give me a second. With this screen. Let me see. Let me see. Right now, can you see the screen? You see the PowerPoint?
Still, not yet.
Okay. So it should be this one. This one, sure. Right now?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay. So that was the good news. So for today, I'm gonna do a recap of what we did last class. And then we are gonna get into a new topic that is energy, sustainability, and environment. And we put three major topics. We are gonna talk further about global warming, what are the critical challenges for a sustainable energy future, and life cycle assessments. So we are gonna do an introduction about how we can assess our energy usage and or how clean are those energy that we use. So there are some assessments, and it's called life cycle assessment, not life. Okay, and then we are gonna have another homework so for your entertainment for the week. Okay. Okay, so last week we talked about energy systems as a whole, and we discussed what is in a system. And as I mentioned before, a system could be see it, as a way to understand what are the inputs, what are the outputs, what are the processes in between. Okay. So when we talk about the Earth system or the planet Earth, come in, join us. Okay. So there was this this diagram that I'm showing here. That the major energy resource that we have is the sun. So that energy can be absorbed by the plants, and the plants can transform that energy into food. So those plants are really smart, something that humans cannot do. But the plants, through the photosynthesis process, can transform the energy of the sun and produce food. And that food, we can eat that food. Okay, and even better. We don't use those plants after millions of years, it becomes fossil fuels. Okay, because all that organic matter can be gone in the future as oil and other source of energy. So really an amazing system that we have nowadays. And with the food that we consume from the plants, then we have our own energy. So then we can do things, because we can do some work, because we have the power, we have the energy. Some things. So there is this cycle that shows, how the energy moves from one source to the different processes and elements in the world. Okay, and sometimes we take this for granted. We really don't acknowledge, what we have on the nation. So, but this is a good diagram that that shows the different path of the energy and how that energy is transformed, because that's what it is. We transform energy from one way to another. Okay. So we talk about systems, and also we went through a history of energy resources used by humankind, and we went, through the history, and back in the time, the power was delivered by humans and animals, and then there was the fire, that was discovered by the ancestors. So that creates, an opportunity to cook food, to heat the place that they live, and so on and so forth. But then there was not much, I guess, at that time, pollutants, after these fires from the wood. And also there was not too many people. Not too many people, so no worries about it. There was plenty of food, natural food, and so on. But then we came with the Industrial Revolution. And it was the start of the humankind on having new ways for transportation. Now we are getting more people. There was this need to move faster and to move more people, because we didn't have it before. So they start creating, cities as well. So people from the rural areas came and start creating cities. So it's a total transformation of our lives. So the Industrial Revolution was great because it started, with a need of transportation, and that need of transportation start, good things about how people can develop ways to create energy. So we got examples about the steam power trains and ships. We start the internal combustion engines. That was a revolution, back in 1800s and so on. Electrification, because people was coming together to the same places. So there was a need, to provide that light and electrification, you know, for people in the cities. So all this needs, more people was coming up as well. So more people was in the earth. So how we adopt things, because that's key on not only on energy, but in any part of our lives. How we are engaged to adopt things. Because it's what it is these days. For example, with computers or social media, how we engage in that thing, because somebody else, you know, is bringing that to our lives. Okay, and we start seeing, you know, the need. Also, the need maybe is there, but we say, okay, I really don't care. So people start, you know, building up, you know, that need. So that energy was not only to create that power, but also create opportunities about jobs too. Create about jobs and other things related to energy. What else was in the history? And today's, about 80% of the US energy requirement is currently met by fossil fuels, coal, oil, and natural gas. So 80% of the mix of energy that we use in the United States comes from those non-renewable energy sources. Okay, 80%. So no matter what we think about renewable energy, Governor Brown signed a bill that in 2045 we are going to be carbon neutral in California. Today's 80% of non-renewable energy is not going to disappear in 20 years. It's not going to disappear in 40 years. You know, there are some trends that say that maybe it's going to be flat, maybe it's going to reduce a little bit. But there is other people, you know, talking about that. Depending on the policies and so on, and how as a humans we move forward, those non-renewable energy are going to reduce a lot. But from 80%, how much is a lot, the reduction? Maybe 20%. So non-renewable energy is going to be 60% of the whole mix of energy, 40%. So that 40% is still a lot, you know? So no matter what, non-renewable energy sources are going to be in our lives for many years and centuries. Okay. What else? So on this slide, on the right side, so you can see how we use the energy in the United States in 2017. So we saw here that electric power consumed 38% of that pool of energy, and transportation 30%. Okay, so those are the major targets in this. So that's what there is a lot of emphasis on electrification. What kind of energy we are going to use for electrification and so on, for electric power, and what kind of energy sources we use for transportation, because it's a key element. That's what you have been seeing on my presentations, talking about a lot about vehicles and transportation. There is one reason, that there is a big chunk of that piece of pie that transportation makes the difference. And moving forward, we are going to have more people. More people is going to have more needs to commute. But also, we have been realizing that, like today, we have students in Tijuana and Ensenada. So they are there. So they are not using, you know, transportation to come here to Calexico and attend the class. So it can be remote. So those kind of things, you know, help us, you know, to reduce energy usage, you know, in some point. But no matter what you do, you use energy. So it has to have a balance, okay? What else? So as 80% of the US energy requirements is from fossil fuels, non renewable energy, there is a lot of pollutants coming out of that. And not only the United States, in every country, pretty much the majority of our energy is coming from those non-renewable sources. And there is a lot of CO2 released to the atmosphere, methane when you use natural gas, or when we have other pollutants, you know, in the air, sulfurs and others, and nitrogen and other things, you know. So there is a lot of in the air, basically, every time that we use non-renewable energy. And last class also, I show you this slide that so that we can understand better, you know, about energy and how energy has been, how we use energy in the past, and or how much energy we put in the past, or how much energy we need to put in order to create the same amount of energy. So there was this example on the left side, on the bottom, that show you the amount of calories needs, say the calorie needs in order to have 1 calorie out, okay? So we are seeing many things, you know, from China, low intensity potatoes, hunting, low intensity corn. So low intensity usage. And all this part, you know, below 1 is really efficient. Anything that we see here on the bottom, below 1 calorie input, is going to have, you know, a good, is going to have at least 1 calorie output from that. But then we start with the Industrial Revolution. We start seeing people just leaving the fields. And so nowadays we have more concentrated agriculture land than it was in the past. So it's really intensive, really intensive. So a lot of energy has to put in order to have energy out. And we are not going to blame anybody here, because it's really, when you see this kind of graph, you can see, okay, so nowadays we are less efficient than we used to be in the past, maybe. But on the right side, on this picture, you can see the energy flow in the United States food system, okay? And you can see the energy per year in BTUs, British tons units. There is a unit for energy. So we can see the breakdown, you know, of the energy. And there is storage, household storage and preparation require 31% of that energy, okay? Just having the agricultural production in the fields, 21%. Transportation, 13%. Services, 6%. Food retail, 3%. So what we are doing too is adding pieces to the food chain here. And every time that we add something, we are adding more energy on that theme, okay? So that's what nowadays we see, you know, that we are putting more energy than the one that creates energy for the food system, okay? And then here was this slide, you know, that shows many things here. Our needs. So one of the things that in any assessment that we have to do, we have to start with the needs assessment. What are our needs? You know, from transportation, shelter, industrial products, transportation, food, anywhere. What are our sources? What are our sources of energy? So I described those as a biomass, geothermal, and other ones. And then it's gonna start creating, you know, we have to think about the balance. How much of that energy this energy, gas, oil, or so on, we have nowadays? And how much that energy is gonna be available for the future, okay? And then there are different influences, you know, like availability resources. So, what is the amount of energy available in the world in order to accomplish these needs, okay? But then in the system, there are different players. We have to talk about production, conversion, and distribution of the energy, how we use that energy. And then there are other influences about these regulations like the one that the Governor Brown, you know, just signed today. That goal, the big goal. So when we talk about politics, I know it's cumbersome, but it's so fundamental that we have policies that make sense. And not only that policy, but the people buy in to that policy. After Governor Brown signed this bill, there was a survey. There is a survey, that asks Californians how they feel about global warming. And they say, yeah, they are concerned about global warming. There was another question about using renewable energy, how they're feeling using renewable energy versus not renewable. They're appealing to use more renewable energy. And there was the other question, because nowadays, the way that we play energy, not renewable energy, some cases is more expensive than non renewable. Okay? So citizens in California understand that they might have to pay more upfront in order to have non renewable energy. But in the long way, we are going to have to spend less money in trying to save the planet, because we are not going to have those emissions, that is going to affect global warming. Okay? So that creates a challenge for us. That what we are doing here in this class is to develop that knowledge, create that awareness, on using non-renewable energy, or having a life, with balances that we can, our next generations can enjoy the earth as we are enjoying right now. So then we have all these, the impacts, as I mentioned, the pollution, the health risks, and so on. So there is a lot of influences. So the map is there, and there are too many players. Too many players. We have too many countries as well. Too many needs, different ambitions in our lives, different ways to see life as well. So it's nothing simple, but just seeing what they say, having this renewable energy program as a bachelor, you are moving really forward. You are really moving forward. So you are seeing, that this is the way to move forward, not only to expand the knowledge on renewable energy, but to create that mass of people, getting into this new, because that's the way to move forward, toward the future, to have a sustainable planet, basically. Okay. In this chart, we talk about CO2 emissions. So from 1990, this is million tons of CO2. In 1990, we got about 20,000 of those units. In 2015, we went up to 30,000. Okay? So it's increasing. It's increasing. So CO2 emissions are increasing because the use of non-renewable energy sources, basically. Okay? And also in this chart, I can show you, in this table on the right side, the world energy consumption. And this graph on CO2 is about the world energy. The world CO2 is not United States or Mexico. It's the world as a whole. Okay. So in 1995, the world energy consumption for electricity. This is just focused on electricity at the world level. In 1995, electricity came from oil, natural gas, coal. Okay, and renewable energy was only 20%. In 2020, in 3 years, this is some projections. It's going to be renewable energy only 21% for that pool of energy. The thing is, they are switching some things. So we are switching more to a natural gas. But natural gas produces a lot of methane. But the thing on this is to blame just one piece of the pie. Because there are, by nature, there are different sources of methane as well. Volcanoes, those kind of things. Okay? Wetlands. Those areas, by the rivers that has some water transitions, they produce methane as well. So there are natural systems that produce methane. And that's what some people, put it on the table and show, in order to keep the natural gas drilling, say, okay, but there are other resources, that natural resources are producing those. So what do you blame as only us? So, but this understanding, how we are moving forward to the future, in understanding what energy resources we have been using so far. And having all these pollutants coming out of the air has been changing the climate of the planet Earth, basically. So nowadays we have more wildfires. Agricultural seasons have been shifting. Maybe our winter are more warmer, in some places. In some places, winter is more cooler. Okay, there are more extreme events, and also we have more people. So people tend to live maybe in areas that are too risky. Okay, nowadays we have news. We have different ways to record things. So our past data maybe lasts 100 years, 200 years, you know. New technology. With new technology, we can track different kind of systems, hurricanes, and so on. So nowadays we know in advance how the hurricanes are moving through. Okay, that's something that we didn't have, in the past. And technology is advancing every year. So every year we have new ways, to track things and to have better data as well. Okay, so a couple of remarks from that presentation. As I say, so the mix of energy that we are using today is pretty much from fossil fuels. Not only from the United States, but in any other countries. Could be 70% of the whole thing. Okay. No matter what we do, I hope that we do the right thing for all of us. Not only for all of us right now, but for the future generations. Fossil fuels are going to stay with us. So that's going to remain with us. So the pollutants are going to be there too. So there is going to be that balance and that need, to create new technology, to have cleaner technology while we use those fossil fuels. Still, population nowadays, pretty much 7 billion population. In the next decades, it's going to be almost 10 billion population, 10 billions, pretty soon. What else? It takes many years, thousands of years, in order to convert those bioenergy into oil and so on. So in some point, it's going to be depleted. Whereas CO2 emissions per capita, I like these values here because the US emissions, the CO2, the tons of CO2 emissions per capita, so per person, in the United States, it's about 15, and it's kind of decreasing a little bit. Canada is kind of flat at 15 too. So Canada and the United States had the same emission per capita of CO2. Mexico, 3.6. I didn't show you the graph, but it's kind of flat. It's just steady. It's steady. But China is coming up, and India increasing a lot. China, 6.6, and India, 1.6. And I show you in last class that population is growing most in those countries, in India and China. So yeah, they are demanding more energy. In China, it's showing that. But it's not as it is in the United States or Canada, okay? But it's coming up, What else? So what we need is another industrial revolution. That's what we need, okay? Because now we create too many problems with energy, okay? So we need another industrial revolution, more clean energy, okay? A way that we see the system as a whole, not as just for humans, but a way that we can incorporate the natural ecosystems, and a way that we can really think toward the future, not only for 70 years that we are going to pass in the earth, or 80 years, 90, I don't know. Okay? So that's what we need. It's another industrial revolution, that can move forward the next generation of people in the planet Earth. Okay? So that's what we did last week. This week we are going to get more into a little more details about global warming, and also what are the critical challenges for a sustainable energy future, and how we do assessments of energy usage. Okay, so that's called life cycle assessment. So let's gonna see these two videos. One is about global warming, only less than 3 minutes. The next one is about greenhouse effects. Okay. Let's see. Change first. You see the video, Ensenada?
Yes, we are seeing it, but
No, you cannot hear. Yeah, we cannot hear neither.
okay.
And let me see. Let me see if I can play with it with this. Oops. No, we cannot hear neither, so. I don't know what to do. Trying to. Let's move this window away from. Guess I have to call IPS. Hey Adrian, this is Jairo. I'm here in LA2. Can you come here because I'm trying to show a video and I cannot hear anything from the video. I can see the video, but I cannot hear. LA2. Okay, thank you, man. Okay, there is some help coming in. So in the meantime, it's gonna do other business. Okay, so on those videos, the idea is to show you, in a good way, what is global warming in general, and then because global warming is because the air pollutants that we are producing these days, is going to have a good introduction about those pollutants like sulfur oxides, carbon dioxide, nitrogen oxides, and methane that is creating a lot of problems these days in our lives. So it's going to continue the, give me a second. Maybe Ensenada cannot see this. Let me see. PowerPoint presentation of the screen. Screen. Now, can you see the screen Ensenada in Tijuana?
We are seeing the PowerPoint presentation.
Global warming. Okay, good. So I just call ITS, so they are coming to see what they can fix the sound. Hopefully they can fix the sound, and then I'm gonna get back and see the videos, okay? So on global warming. So we had those 4 major pollutants, as I mentioned before, particulate matter, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, and carbon dioxide. Also in this graph, you can see the different energy sources that we use, gas, coal, oil, bioenergy. So gas is the first one, it's on the left side, the dark blue, coal is the blue light, oil is the gray, bioenergy is the green, and no combustion is the other color that I don't know how to say. Hey, Adrian. Let me get back. Thank you for coming. Let me see, maybe escape. Okay. Audio, yeah. When I try this. Audio. Give me a second. Okay.
Are you using the PC or the Mac?
The PC. So let's try.
Climate change has been in the news
What
for
do you think?
years.
Oh, well,
But
you
what
have
is
to-
it,
you have
and
to
how
go
will it
to-
affect?
To class mode, because you're showing whatever you have there, so you have to swap it to class mode, so the whole system.
So you did.
So what I did right now, wasn't make that mode. So that means every day is having some. So in order to show that, you have to go to classroom mode and select that one.
Okay. So now we can leave it in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let me get back here. Thank you again, man. Wow. So quickly. Appreciate it. So
That is room is very complicated.
yeah, too many buttons.
Us. To understand climate,
I need to get back to this share screen. Okay, Ensenada, can you see the video?
Yes, we can.
One, okay. So,
climate
Okay.
change has been in the news for years.
thank you.
But what is it, and how will it affect us? To understand climate change, we first need to know about the greenhouse effect. The Earth gets heat from the sun. In the atmosphere, greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide trap this heat and keep it from escaping back to outer space. Trapping some heat in the atmosphere is a good thing because it keeps the planet warm enough for us to live. But there's a problem. People all over the world are adding extra carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. That's because today we burn fossil fuels like coal, oil, and gas to do many of our everyday activities, like driving our cars, using our computers, and heating our homes. All of this extra carbon dioxide is trapping more heat in the atmosphere, making the Earth warmer and causing other climate changes too. The signs of climate change are all around us. Temperatures are getting warmer, giant ice sheets are melting, and the oceans are rising. In many places, flowers are blooming earlier, snow is melting sooner, and birds aren't flying as far south for the winter. So why does this matter? Well, if the planet keeps getting warmer, we can expect more powerful storms and more flooding, droughts, and heat waves. And these changes could cause additional problems, like the spread of certain diseases, more wildfires, and food and water shortages. Climate change could put entire ecosystems, like coral reefs, in danger, and many plants and animals could become extinct. The good news is that we can take action. We can put less carbon dioxide into the atmosphere if we generate electricity from clean sources, like solar and wind power, instead of burning coal, oil, or gas. We can also drive less, use public transportation, and choose cars that go further using less gas. And you can do your part. Reduce your energy use by turning off the lights, the computer, and the TV when you're not using them, and walk or ride your bike to work or school. By making smart choices and working together, we can make a difference. Check out the rest of this website to learn more about the causes and effects of climate change, as well as the practical solutions that can help protect our planet's future.
Okay. So that was the first video on this series. It was from the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. Try to show you videos from agencies, that don't provide bias to us. So that's one of the key things on this. What kind of information we are delivering to the public? What is the source of that information? So that's an issue sometimes, because you deliver information that is biased, so the public cannot take knowledgeable actions. Okay. So that video was pretty cool. Give us some perspective about climate change and how the humankind has been affecting climate change because the overuse of fossil fuels, basically. But there is hope, as you saw there. That's why we are here in this class, and see, renewable energy coming up and helping us, transform the energy sector. So let's gonna get into this video as the greenhouse effect. It's only 2 minutes, and then we can discuss about it.
Did you know that gases in our
Screen.
atmosphere help control the Earth's temperature? Greenhouse gases, like carbon dioxide, trap heat in the atmosphere and keep the Earth warm. This is called the greenhouse effect. It all starts with sunlight, which is a form of energy. Land and water absorb most of the sunlight that reaches the Earth. The rest is reflected back to space. The Earth's surface warms up, then gives off energy in a different form, called infrared radiation. This energy travels back towards outer space. Greenhouse gases trap some of this energy in the atmosphere before it can escape, making the Earth warmer. We need some greenhouse gases. Without them, our planet would be too cold for plants and animals to live. But people are adding extra carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases to the atmosphere. Whenever we drive a car, use electricity, or make a product in a factory, we use energy. A lot of this energy comes from burning fossil fuels like oil, gas, and coal, which produces carbon dioxide. How do you think extra greenhouse gases affect the amount of heat trapped in the Earth's atmosphere? You guessed it, extra greenhouse gases trap more heat, which makes the whole planet warmer. And warmer temperatures lead to effects like changing rain and snow patterns, rising sea level, melting glaciers and ice sheets, and much more. It's a big problem, and it's all happening because we are overloading the atmosphere with greenhouse gases. By making the greenhouse effect stronger, we're upsetting the Earth's natural balance and warming our planet.
Okay. Just gonna get back to the presentation. Okay. So let's gonna talk. See. Okay, so we have so many. We still need some of those greenhouse gases in order to be in this planet Earth. The thing is that the imbalance, that we are getting more and more greenhouses that the planet Earth can hold and can maintain, good temperatures. So in this screen, I show you the share of natural gas in total energy-related emissions of air pollutants in CO2. So we got gas, coal, oil, bioenergy in non-combustion but different colors. So gas is on the left side, on the dark blue. Then we have coal, oil on the gray, bioenergy green. And on the bottom is the percentage of each of those ones. And we have the 4 major pollutants, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, sulfur, and particulate matter. Okay, so if we see carbon dioxide gas represents 20% of the whole thing. But coal, it has 20, 40, 50%. And then oil is the another 15% of that share. Okay? So between coal and oil, those are the major players that produce CO2. So it seems to me that natural gas doesn't produce too much. Okay? When we go to nitrogen oxides, the largest player is oil. That is produced maybe, 60%. So there is one person or one element that we can blame. Oil for this kind of gases. Sulfurs, It's going to be coal. Okay? And particle matter, bioenergy. But this bioenergy is because the wood and other traditional solid fuels that we still use. So those are the ones that produce a lot of particle matter. So this graph, show you the different distribution of each of these pollutants, by the different sources of energy. Okay. So let's gonna put some numbers on how much or what is the amount of pollutants that we have in the air these days compared to the past. So in this graph, you will see from back in the time to our current time, okay? And we have on left side, we have CO2 concentrations and nitrogen oxides concentrations too. CO2 and nitrate oxides on the left and methane on the right side. So the black line is the CO2, and sorry, is the nitrogen oxides concentrations that start in 265 parts per billion, and nowadays we went all the way to 320. Sorry, 320. So 265 to 320. CO2 concentrations in the past about 280, and nowadays 380. Okay. So it's a substantial, increase on those ones. But the one that, that has been increased the most is methane. Methane started back in, say 700 parts per billion, and increased all the way to 2,000 nowadays. So methane is the one, that has been increased a lot. But as I said before, there are different sources of methane. There are natural sources that accounts for about 40% of these concentrations. It's pretty much coming from wetlands or volcanoes. The other 60% is from anthropogenic sources, like livestock. Livestock produce about 1/4 of the total. So about 25% of the methane is coming from livestock. The energy sector, because the energy sector uses different kind of sources for energy, and also landfills. Landfills can produce some percentage, of this methane. So different sources, and the most dramatic one that has been changed a lot is methane. Okay. Let's gonna get back to the United States. Let's see how the carbon dioxide concentrations or emissions has been produced all over the years. So on the left side, we have carbon dioxide emissions from energy consumption by source. So we have coal on the blue line, on the brown, we have natural gas, and on the green, we have petroleum, okay? So we have the natural gas, is coming up since 2010. Coal was coming up until 2010, but then decreased. And that decrease was about policies made by the president. So there was a lot of regulations so that the coal industry went down a lot. It seems to me that the new government that we have, those emissions are going to get up because there are going to be new regulations for coal, and incentivize that mining. Petroleum, is the largest one among the three. It's pretty much steady. It's just right there. But you see the amount. This is 1 million metric tons of carbon dioxide from 0 to 300. So petroleum right now is about 200 million tons of carbon dioxide. Natural gas is about 150 millions of tons. But carbon dioxide emissions from biogas energy consumption. So we have wood, we have biomass waste, we have ethanol, and we have biodiesel. And see these numbers? These numbers are 0 to 20 versus, on average, 150 from the non-renewable. So the renewable energy dioxide emissions are way lower, almost 1 order of magnitude than the non-renewable energy. Okay, so we have 150 to 200 million metric tons of carbon dioxide versus 20, even less than that, 5, 6 on some of these biomass energy consumption. Okay, so the difference is dramatic, you know, when we talk about CO2 emissions. Okay, so moving forward in our class, let's gonna start talking about what are the critical challenges for a sustainable energy future. So let's gonna start with vehicles, with transportation. So one of the key elements of this is improvements in energy efficiency of vehicles. Let me start with this chart on the right top side that say that typical energy split in a stationary engine. So this is a stationary engine, not a vehicle. So out of the 100% applied fuel energy, only 33% is effective power. So 33% of the 100 units that you put in are transformed to what you need. Okay? Then you have 5% on friction losses out of that 100%. Then you have 27% waste heat. And then you have 35% another waste heat through the exhaust gas. Okay? So you have a lot of conversion, not to warm, but to heat. Okay? So there is a way to convert all this heat and put it back. Okay? And that's what is this these days, you know, engineers, you know, trying to create new systems that can take this heat and put it back to work, basically. Okay? And if you go to other vehicles, it could be even worse. It could be only 20%, 25%. So it's really a change, you know, that nowadays we still have such inefficient systems in place. Okay? So there are other players when we talk about improvements in energy efficiency of vehicles, like the materials that we use in order to create vehicles. So if we have lightweight materials, there's going to be less friction on it too. So that's going to improve the efficiency on this. As I said, internal combustion engines, so convert that waste heat to work. Battery-based electrification. So having batteries, you know, plug-in hybrid vehicles. So that's going to help us, you know, in order to meet the critical challenge toward the future. All right. So let's gonna see this small video here, so you have a better understanding about the waste of energy when we talk about vehicles. Let me share that first. Screen. Sure.
Let me focus a minute on the light vehicles, the cars and light trucks, because we all know the most about those. Probably everybody here drives one. And yet we may not realize that in a standard sedan, of all the fuel energy you feed into the car, 7/8 never gets to the wheels. It's lost first in the engine, idling at 0 miles a gallon, the powertrain, and accessories. So then of the energy that does get to the wheels, only 1/8 of it, half of that goes to heat the tires and road or to heat the air the car pushes aside, and only this little bit, only 6%, actually ends up accelerating the car and then heating the brakes when you stop. In fact, since 95% of the weight you're moving is the car, not the driver, less than 1% of the fuel energy ends up moving the driver. This is not very gratifying after more than a century of devoted engineering effort. Moreover, three-fourths of the fuel use is caused by the weight of the car, and it's obvious from the diagram that every unit of energy you save at the wheels is going to avoid wasting another 7 units of energy getting that energy to the wheel. So there's huge leverage for making the car a lot lighter.
Okay, I hope that video reinforced the inefficiencies that we have today on vehicles. But however, there are lighter vehicles today, but transportation uses heavier vehicles as well too. Farming operations uses pretty heavier vehicles as well too. So there is a lot of room for improvements on having more efficient vehicles towards the future. Okay, so keeping up with improvements in energy efficiency of vehicles, alternative liquid transportation fuels is the other way, to increase efficiencies. In this graph, I wanted to show you that the type of fuel, hydrogen, petroleum fuels like gasoline, diesel, kerosene, batteries as well. So we have different groups here. We have also coal, we have wood, and we have fat. And we have the megajoules per kilogram energy stored by the different source. So by far, hydrogen can store more energy, 120 megajoules per kilogram. But alkaline batteries of lithium batteries can only store just a fraction, really, really tiny. Okay? And what is this important? And something that I didn't have this graph show you is the nuclear energy. Nuclear energy is the one that is really large by far. It can store anywhere from 500,000 to 88 million megajoules per kilogram. Okay? Versus 2 from the coal. So that's a big difference. Okay? So that's what is not easy to come out with resources, that have all these power, on different kind of fuels. One of the things that I wanted to bring to your attention is like biofuels, like ethanol. For example, Brazil is one of the largest ethanol producers in the global earth. So Brazil produced about 800 gallons per acre from sugar cane, versus 400 gallons per acre of corn in the United States. So feedstock cost and efficiency are key variables. So it's not possible to have sugar cane with that production here in the United States because we have different environmental conditions. Okay. But the other thing that that we have to discuss is is today's discussion. So we are growing food to feed ourselves, or we are going to grow food for energy. Okay, so this is today's discussion that we have as a society, and that's a major discussion that we have today is how we are going to grow food for energy if we have people not feed every day. Okay, so all those fundamentals, that we know that are important ourselves, for humankind, bring to perspective. But this is some of the information that I wanted to share with you. Other way, is maybe algae production. We have 3/4 of planet Earth oceans. So we have plenty of water, to produce algae, or maybe to put in a building in really intensive way, to produce algae as well. But any of those ways, to produce any kind of energy depends of cost, space, and the availability of land or water or so on and so forth. Okay? Well, the other critical challenge for a sustainable energy future is to develop carbon sequestration methods. We already saw and discussed about CO2 emissions, methane and other pollutants. So one question or one comment from you could be, so why not just to take out of the environment those CO2? like we do with the wastewater in wastewater treatment plants. That's right. So we have the capacity, you know, to do those extractions and convert, or even better, why not just to hold more green? Because plants take CO2 and sun through the photosynthesis to produce energy. So why not just to have more in a state of deforestate our forests and other land? Why not just to take pride of those, because those ones are helping us, you know, to clean the air. Okay. So that's key too. Is now that we have the problem, how we can take out of the system that CO2, and that's possible. And there are some ways to do it. But again, it requires cost, it requires some investments, and you know, and policy in order to implement these things. So let's gonna get to this video about CO2.
Hi, this is Bill Pup.
And how CO2 is moving in the atmosphere, okay?
I'm a climate scientist at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. What you're looking at is a supercomputer model of carbon dioxide levels in the Earth's atmosphere. The visualization compresses 1 year of data into a few minutes. Carbon dioxide is the most important greenhouse gas affected by human activity. About half of the carbon dioxide emitted from fossil fuel combustion remains in the atmosphere, while the other half is absorbed by natural land and ocean reservoirs. In the Northern Hemisphere, we see the highest concentrations are focused around major emission sources over North America, Europe, and Asia. Notice how the gas doesn't stay in one place. The dispersion of carbon dioxide is controlled by the large-scale weather patterns within the global circulation. During spring and summer in the Northern Hemisphere, plants absorb a substantial amount of carbon dioxide through photosynthesis, thus removing some of the gas from the atmosphere. We see this change in the model as the red and purple colors start to fade. Meanwhile, in the Southern Hemisphere, we see the release of another pollutant, carbon monoxide. This is a gas that's both harmful to the environment and to humans. During the summer months, plumes of carbon monoxide stream from fires in Africa, South America, and Australia, contributing to high concentrations in the atmosphere. Notice how these emissions are also transported by winds to other parts of the world. As summer transitions to fall and plant photosynthesis decreases, carbon dioxide begins to accumulate in the atmosphere. Although this change is expected, we're seeing higher concentrations of carbon dioxide accumulate in the atmosphere each year. This is contributing to the long-term trend of rising global temperatures. The Orbiting Carbon Observatory 2, or OCO2, will be the first NASA satellite mission to provide a global view of carbon dioxide. OCO2 observations and atmospheric models like GEOS-5 will work closely together to better understand both human emissions and natural fluxes of carbon dioxide. This will help guide climate models toward more reliable predictions of future conditions across the globe.
Okay. So coming back to presentation. Was a cool video, doesn't it? Show you the power of computers these days, and the power that human has in order to collect data too. So now we can visualize that data. That's one of the, this video brings, you know, to our attention many things. One is the technology that we have nowadays. all these sensors that we have also have in the air, in the space too, that can collect this kind of data these days. That it was impossible to do it many years ago, and now we have. But not only collecting that data, is showing that data to the people, the visualization of that data. We just run 1 year of CO2 fluxes and emissions in the global Earth. And it seems really cool, to see the seasonal of these emissions, to see how the patterns are moving, and so on. It brings new perspectives, because that's what it is. Maybe for a scientist, this is nothing new, but for the public, say, wow, I didn't know. And you see this kind of videos, it brings, a better way to explain the things of what's happening. The other comment from this video that I think is so relevant for us is that no matter what we do, if we stop non-renewable energy consumption right now, CO2 is going to remain in the air. So it's not only to stop, it's to do something in order to sequestrate that CO2, basically. Okay, that we have to do as well. So I guess those two comments. I don't know if you have any comments on that video. Okay, we are cool. Can we stop climate change by removing CO2 from the air? So this is a pretty interesting question too. Can we stop climate change by removing CO2 from the air? Let's see. Let's see.
To avoid dangerous climate change, we're going to need to cut emissions rapidly. That should be a pretty uncontentious statement, certainly with this audience. But here's something that's slightly more contentious. It's not going to be enough. We will munch our way through our remaining carbon budget for 1.5 degrees in a few short years, and the 2-degree budget in about 2 decades. We need to not only cut emissions extremely rapidly, we also need to take carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. Thank you. I work assessing a whole range of these proposed techniques to see if they can work. We could use plants to take CO2 out and then store it in trees, in the soil, deep underground, or in the oceans. We could build large machines, so-called artificial trees, that will scrub CO2 from the air. For these ideas to be feasible, we need to understand whether they can be applied at a vast scale in a way that is safe, economic, and socially acceptable. All of these ideas come with trade-offs. None of them are perfect, but many have potential. It's unlikely that any one of them will solve it on its own. There is no silver bullet, but potentially together they may form the silver buckshot that we need to stop climate change in its tracks. I'm working independently on one particular idea which uses natural gas to generate electricity in a way that takes carbon dioxide out of the air. How does that work? So the origin power process feeds natural gas into a fuel cell. About half the chemical energy is converted into electricity, and the remainder into heat, which is used to break down limestone into lime and carbon dioxide. Now, at this point, you're probably thinking that I'm nuts. It's actually generating carbon dioxide. But the key point is, all of the carbon dioxide generated, both from the fuel cell and from the lime kiln, is pure. And that's really important because it means you can either use that carbon dioxide or you can store it away deep underground at low cost. And then the lime that you produce can be used in industrial processes, and in being used, it scrubs CO2 out of the air. Overall, the process is carbon negative. It removes carbon dioxide from the air. If you normally generate electricity from natural gas, you emit about 400 grams of CO2 into the air for every kilowatt hour. With this process, that figure is minus 600. At the moment, power generation is responsible for about a quarter of all carbon dioxide emissions. Hypothetically, if you replaced all power generation with this process, then you would not only eliminate all of the emissions from power generation, but you would start removing emissions from other sectors as well, potentially cutting 60% of overall carbon emissions. You could even use the line to add it directly to seawater to counteract ocean acidification, one of the other issues that is caused by CO2 in the atmosphere. In fact, you get more bang for your buck. You absorb about twice as much carbon dioxide when you add it to seawater as when you use it industrially. But this is where it gets really complicated. Whilst counteracting ocean acidification is a good thing, we don't fully understand what the environmental consequences are. And so we need to assess whether this treatment is actually better than the disease that is seeking to cure. We need to put in place step-by-step governance for experiments to assess this safely. And the scale. To avoid dangerous climate change, we are going to need to remove trillions, and yes, that's trillions with a T, trillions of tons of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere in the decades ahead. It will cost a few percent of GDP, big defense-sized expenditure, lots of industrial activity, and inevitably harmful side effects. But if the scale seems enormous, it is only because of the scale of the problem that we are seeking to solve is enormous as well. We can no longer avoid these thorny issues. We face risks whichever way we turn. A world changed by climate change, or a world changed by climate change and our efforts to counter climate change. Would that it were not so, but we can no longer afford to close our eyes, block our ears, and say la la la. We need to grow up and face the consequences of our actions. Does talk of curing climate change undermine the will to cut emissions? This is a real concern. So we need to emphasize the paramount importance of reducing emissions and how speculative these ideas are. But having done so, we still need to examine them. Can we cure climate change? I don't know, but we certainly can't if we don't try. We need ambition without arrogance. We need the ambition to restore the atmosphere, to draw down carbon dioxide back to a level that is compatible with a stable climate and healthy oceans. This will be an enormous undertaking. You could describe it as a cathedral project. Those involved at the outset may draft the plans and dig the foundations, but they will not raise the spire to its full height. That task, that privilege, belongs to our descendants. None of us will see that day, but we must start in the hope that future generations will be able to finish the job. So, do you want to change the world? I don't. I do not seek to change the world, but rather keep it as it's meant to be. Thank you.
I just want to ask you just a couple of other questions. Tell us a bit more about this idea of putting lime in the ocean. I mean, on the face of it, it's pretty compelling. Anti-ocean acidification, and it absorbs more CO2. You talked about we need to do an experiment on this. What would a responsible experiment look like?
So I think you need to do a series of experiments, but you need to do them just very small, stage by stage. In the same way, when you're trialing a new drug, you wouldn't just go straight into human trials straight off. You would do a small experiment. And so the first things to do are experiments entirely on land in special containers away from the environment. And then once you are confident that that can be done safely, you move to the next stage. If you're not confident, you don't. But step by step.
And who would fund such experiments? Because they kind of impact the whole planet at some level. How is that why nothing is happening on this?
So I think you can do small-scale experiments in national waters, and then it's probably the requirement of national funders to do that. But ultimately, if you wanted to counter ocean acidification in this way on a global scale, you would need to do it in international waters, and then you would need to have an international community working on it.
I mean, even in national waters, you know, the ocean's all connected. That line is going to get out there. People feel outraged about doing experiments on the planet, as we've heard. How do you counter that?
I think you touch on something which is really important. It's about a social license to operate. And I think that it may be that it isn't possible to do, but we need to have the courage to try, to move this forward, to see what we can do, and to engage openly. We need to engage with people in a transparent way. We need to ask them beforehand. And I think if we ask them, we have to be open to the possibility that the answer will come back, no, don't do it.
Jim, thanks so much. That was really fascinating.
Thank you.
Okay, let's gonna discuss that video. There are a couple of good things from the video. The one that I appreciate most is to have ideas, maybe a crazy idea. And he was addressing, you know, how to start this kind of projects. And for me, it was a good rationale. So when you try something new, you will do it at a small scale. That's why we do research. So we do research first, maybe in the lab, to see that works. And we seeing that the things in the lab are working, then we bring those things, you know, to the field. But it's not going to be a big field. Maybe a small field, maybe in a research center, that maybe the one that I lead these days. So it's a controlled environment that we have there. And then when we are seeing that the things are promising, we may work with a farmer or a grower, you know, in a real setup, and see that the things are moving forward and so on. So that answer about how to test this kind of technology is valid. That's what it is. The challenge is about funding. Funding, that's the other thing. How to engage, you know, the investors into these ideas. That's critical. And that, how we are going to give the value to the environment so that the investors can invest in having a better planet for all of us and for the future generations. That's another discussion, you know, from this video. What else was there? And as I said before, it's not only that we have to, if we cut our fossil fuel emissions today, we're going to solve the problem. It's not, because the CO2 is going to remain there. So it's a way, you know, to create technology in order to remove those CO2 from the atmosphere. And there is always trade-offs on these kind of things. Maybe it's going to cost larger investments on new equipment and so on, in order to have a cleaner emissions. Are we going to charge more to the end user for those things as well, so that we can recover those investments? We are going to have new regulations, but we're always afraid about regulations, no matter what, because we want to be free, okay? And when regulations come to play, let's say like a taxes, it's going to have more taxes on the gas, so that we have some revenue in order to invest on our streets and payments, you know, on our streets in our cities, or to use that funding, you know, in order to clean the air as well. So regulations, you know, has to be there too, and it has to be a toolbox of many things. As he said, new ideas has to be economical and social acceptable. Sometimes we know that doing this, we are going to fix the problem. But maybe some societies are not appealing to those things. Maybe for some beliefs, and so on. So it's not only that we invent the things and we are gonna implement those things, is that those things are gonna be socially acceptable or not. And that's key on this one. And be ambitious. So really have, put up front, the environment in our future generations, to this. But humans, we are tended just to think on our small lifespan that we have in the earth. So we are not looking, 100 years, 200 years toward the future, because we are really focused on a small time, that we live here. So be ambitious, be generous, to the next generations is part of the picture in order to create a better environment. Oh, another thing is, so how we can store CO2. So one idea too is to remove that CO2 and put it back where we extract the fossil fuels. All the oil and petroleum that we extracted. So that is the space, we can put it back to where it belongs, that CO2. So there is already, places that we can put back the CO2. Okay, so now let's gonna get back to another topic for today. That is the life cycle assessment. And then we are gonna touch base about modeling. And finally, we are gonna discuss our next homework, okay? So let me see, life cycle, this one, okay. Okay, let's gonna talk about life cycle assessment. Okay, so this is a way to assess the environmental impacts associated with all the stages of a product's life, from the raw material, extraction, as you can see here in this small diagram. So basically, these kind of methods assess the life cycle from the raw materials that we use for vehicles or whatever we want to create, the material processing, the manufacturing of those things, the assembly, when we use the product, and we waste that, or maybe we recycle those. So this kind of assessment integrates, every of the pieces of anything that we create. Okay. So the life cycle, as we have, when we do this kind of assessments, we have different effects. Some are direct effects, like moving the train. Other are auxiliary effects, like evaluating the total greenhouse gas emissions for constructing the infrastructure and divided by the total number of trips. There are other effects about the supply chain and so on. And what kind of questions we can have when we do this kind of analysis? For example, we can ask ourselves, where can a transit agency most cost effectively reduce their energy and environmental footprint? So this is kind of the question, that we can relate when we do this kind of life cycle assessments. Another question could be, what is the effect of implementing a new transit line in a city? Okay, so we have to quantify those effects on having new infrastructure, so we can do this kind of assessments. Okay, so let me support those ideas with this short video.
As the Earth goes round, we may have thought about our planet and what it needs most, a more sustainable future for everyone. And that's what everyone wants, including our friend Kim. something like sleep to recharge the batteries. Freshwater reserves are increasingly scarce on the planet and in Kim's home. And saving resources isn't exactly his strong point. From the looks of it, food resources are also scarce here. It's time to think about resupplying. And it's difficult to choose from so many options. You may think that this yogurt container has a very short life between the supermarket and the trash can. But who said that's how the story ends? And who said the supermarket was the start? There have already been many phases in this product's life cycle, and many more are still to come. To better understand how this works and its impacts, a very efficient tool exists: the life cycle assessment. You want an example? Let's analyze the cycle of the very same yogurt pot. Everything starts with the extraction of the raw materials. Among other things, oil is used to make the plastic pot that will protect its contents. There's also the milk used to make the yogurt, the strawberry for flavor, the aluminum foil lid to seal in the product. There's lots of different processes. And each one has various kinds of impacts on the environment. And the cycle is only just beginning. At various moments, there's need for transportation, and storage, and distribution. It's a long ways to reach the consumer. And like I said before, the story doesn't end with the trash can. The pot can be recycled and used to make a new product, with the cycle restarting, or more precisely, continuing. LCA provides a rigorous analysis of the environmental impacts of all stages of the production process. This analysis helps manufacturers make decisions that help improve processes, products, and services. As you can see, every element of the universe, including ourselves, has a life cycle. Now that you've seen how it works, you won't be able to resist paying attention to the life cycle of every little thing around you, and to compare the impacts that each product has in order to make conscientious choices. For real.
Okay, just want to discuss this video. So basically, it's an assessment of the environmental impacts. It's a way to quantify those environmental impacts. Nowadays, we need, or the consumers or the users are requesting more information in order to make decisions. So in order to have, in order to make better decisions, we need to have information. We need to have data. We need to have analysis, and then we can choose. We can choose from one thing to another. So another interesting thing that happens there, that no matter what we do in our life, we always are related to water, energy, and food. In any of those instances, there are some impacts, maybe good impacts or bad. And we have to quantify those impacts in order to make decisions and so forth. Because time constraint, there are a couple of more videos, but I guess you will be able to see it later on by your own. have videos about gasoline versus electric cars and biodiesel. So basically, it's showing you what are the different impacts, under different different assemblage, of cars, gasoline versus electric cars. And the biodiesel, one of the things that I want to bring to your attention is biodiesel. We can produce biodiesel from soybeans, okay, from corn, those kind of things. And are you aware about GMOs, about genetically modified organisms? Are you aware of those kind of new ways to develop new crops, the GMOs? Yeah. What do you think about those? Because there is a lot of controversy. There is people that suppose to do that because it's genetically engineered modifications. It's not natural. So people, when you eat things, some people is concerned about what they eat. Others doesn't care. As long as, it fits my body, that's fine. That's fine. But other people is concerned, So there is a lot of controversy about those GMOs. But in this video in particular, it's showing that GMOs can produce more. And then that production could be more into the biofuels, okay? So we may realize that maybe some things doesn't work or they are not acceptable by us as a society, but maybe the same things are acceptable in other ways, okay? So just think about it, and when you see these kind of videos, it brings, perspectives. It's basically what I wanted to tell you, new perspectives on your lives. Okay, so how do we assess? That was a short presentation about life cycle assessments or environmental impacts assessments, basically. Pretty simple, straightforward. Very difficult. It's very difficult to do those assessments. If I get back to what we did, because you have to track everything. And in an open market that we have nowadays, we have parts from China. We have, when we assemble a car here in the United States, we may have some parts from Mexico. Or in the other way. So when Mexico assembles some cars, they may have parts from the United States, from Germany, and other places. So in order to track, in order to do this assessment, you have to cover a lot of ground, and you have to assess, you have to bring information from many different places. So it's not easy. It's not easy to make those assessments. But that was, an introduction of environmental assessments. So this question, how do we assess future impacts of pollutant emissions of ecosystems? I show you, different kind of data that have been collected to the past. Nice, cool videos about visualization of planet Earth and the fluxes of CO2 and so on. But how we project all those impacts toward the future? So I give you some ideas. Maybe tossing a coin, and today it is 100. Tomorrow I'm gonna toss in a coin and say, okay, it is head, it's gonna be minus 20 degrees. It is the other side, it's gonna be more. Okay, so pretty simple, So that's one option. Using historic data and statistical projections, yes, that's what we do as a scientist. Scientists use past data and try to project, or try to use that data and generate some kind of models, statistical models. And then from that, try to infer towards the future, okay? But in that way, it's not completely, there are some uncertainty. Because what is gonna happen in the future, it depends on many variables that maybe didn't happen in the past, okay? So there is that variability that when we have these projections just using data, it has some uncertainty toward the future, okay? The other way is to develop computer models. Develop models, physically based models. Now we have a way better understanding of how the ecosystem works. We understand the conservation of mass, the conservation of energy, and many other things, and we can solve those equations that that we couldn't do it, many years ago. But nowadays, with computers and so on, we can solve those equations. Really, really physical-based equations that we can put in models. And then with the power of computing, we can run computers for 1 year. We can run 100 years of data in maybe 1 day because the power of computers. If we are thinking in that way 20 years ago, that was impossible. That was impossible because we didn't have the power of computing so fast information. But nowadays we have. So about that, using computer models, it was created an intergovernmental panel on climate change back in 1988. So there was a bunch of people from different nationalities, that create this intergovernmental panel on climate change to develop projections toward the future. And since that, they provide reports. Nowadays, we have the 5th report so far. So it takes time, to create those reports. But those are pretty much projections toward the future. How these emissions that we are seeing today, how we are going to see the magnitude of those in 50 years, in 100 years. So what they do, they use physically based models in order to compute these projections. So as you can see here in this graph on the right side, they call a 3-dimensional globe climate change model. So basically, they have the planet Earth, and they have discretization. It's a 3-dimensional. So the ones in engineering, they understand better, what is a 3-dimensional, 2-dimensional, and 1-dimensional. And there are models that don't have any dimensions. So those are called black boxes. So 3-dimensional is pretty much, really what is going on in the environment. So there is a spatial scale, and a temporal scale on these ones. So on these models, there is a bunch of equations that deal with biochemistry of greenhouses, equations related to ocean circulation, information about hydrology and vegetation, information about pollution, what else? Models or equations about how the atmosphere and the fluxes occurs, and so on, and the Earth-Sun heat balance as well. So it's a combination of equations and data that you can feed in these models. Some of these things is so when these programs runs, they provide outputs, and the resolution of those outputs is about 600 kilometers. So in a 600 square kilometer, everything that happens there is the same. There is no variability. It's like I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tables. So my scale resolution in this room is the size of this table. So every table is pretty much not independent, but everything that happens here is affecting there, or affecting there, and so on. So that's the spatial resolution. But if I don't have the understanding for every table, and rather than that I just want to have a general understanding of this room, I will say I will not have any tables, but everything is going to be there combined. Okay? So that means that I'm losing the variation of every table in order to get an outcome. Okay? This is the same with the time. So these models also, when they run the model, the outputs could be every year. So what happened in 1 year or 1 month, the model didn't capture that. Okay, so that's the temporal resolution too. So on those kind of things is why we have some uncertainties. So although we understand better our environment, we have better equations, we have a lot of computer power, we still don't understand many things. And these models needs also data. You have to feed the models with data. And sometimes we have areas that where we have more data than other areas. We may have collected more information here in Imperial County about temperature than the ones in Mexicali, and it's not too far away. We may have more stations here that collect weather data in Imperial County, more than in Mexicali. So we have a better resolution of data here, or longer history of data. And there is always an uncertainty on this. So that's why I refer to this wheel chip, because sometimes you get lost and you don't know what direction to take, even with modeling. So you just toss in the coin. That's what it is, okay? So model is not the only answer of this, but it's a tool that is valid and is used widely, and it's gonna be used more towards the future. So as a recap for today's lecture, about what are the critical challenges for a sustainable energy future. There is a lot of room for efficiencies. For example, nowadays, the efficiency of solar panels is about 18%. So we can get up to 94%. That's what I read, in some literature. So there is room, to increase the efficiency. And for example, in solar panels, the cost of these new ways to produce energy, it has to something that has to be in the place. So that is one of the things that sometimes makes prohibitive to use renewable energy. Safety issues too, because you can say, okay, if I have lighter vehicles, that's going to increase the efficiency of the vehicle. It's going to have it's going to require less gas on it. But if that vehicle is not going to be safety, I'm not going to buy it. That's right. I'm not going to buy a vehicle that is not safety. So safety issues also are playing in this role as well, as moving forward. Policies, regulations, as we discussed already. Infrastructure. We are living in a world that is already set up for no renewable energy, because that technology has been developing for over 100 years. So the infrastructure is in place for that. Okay, so bringing new ways of energy is going to require new infrastructure or new thinking on how to move forward the transmission and distribution of that energy. The marketing too. So marketing plays a big role on this as well. Education and research, what we are doing right now, educating ourselves, about these new opportunities, having research to have new technology that help us to be more sustainable toward the future. Global warming is one of the key elements. It's one of the things that we are facing these days. Extreme weather events, drought, flooding, and so on. So those things are affecting our lives every day. Challenges, how to project things towards the future, how we are seeing ourselves towards the future. These models are for example, the ones that we talked today, these models are comprehensive, but still we are missing parts of that. We are missing maybe the economic things, the social part on these ones, how humans, make decisions, how those decisions are going to impact these models as well. So how we are going to fit that data into the models is something that is challenging. And at the end is the nexus. As I said before, everything is related to water, energy, and food. We can have food for energy. That's right. But maybe part of the society don't want to go to that because there's going to be a risk of food production. Because the market of energy is better than the market of food. So growers maybe go through the energy sector. Okay? So that food is going to be not for food, it's going to be for energy. So it's that nexus that is bringing challenges. Challenges that as a human beings, we have to solve, pretty quickly in order to move forward towards the future. Okay. Any questions about that lecture? That was that brings, a lot of perspectives. For some of you, maybe the majority of you understand these things because it's part of your majors, but from others like me, brings more perspective and ideas and the foundation of this class. All right? So let's gonna talk about the homework, okay? Our second homework. Let me get back. So this is due next Tuesday. So I'm asking to prepare and deliver a 5 to 10 minute presentation using Microsoft PowerPoint, okay? And I'm gonna give you a peer review publication, all right? And it's gonna be in groups of up to 2 students. So you can be by yourself or up to another student working on this. So I'm gonna assume that you have not delivered a presentation, okay? That this is kind of new for you. It's not new for you? So it is not. So these are the elements of this presentation, okay? So things that you have to work in order to do a successful presentation. First of all, know your audience, okay? So this presentation is for your classmates, okay? So now you have a better understanding of each other, so you may feel comfortable, okay? When I have to deliver a presentation to a public that I don't know, I really don't, sometimes I don't feel comfortable, okay? So that happens. But maybe for you, that you are classmates, you're feeling that confidence, and maybe it's not a big deal, okay? So when you create the slides, be clear on your slides. Your slides, some of my slides are not clear because I'm teaching. I try to create confusion. But when you deliver a presentation for a specific topic, make sure that your slide is so clear, not with a bunch of things. Use images, tables, and figures, things that people can read from that distance, okay? Use a logical flow. The logical flow is gonna depend on your publication, in this case, okay? So read your publication, the paper that I'm gonna give you, read it, and then put it into the presentation, okay? And practicing. This is key. As soon as you finish your slides, and in this case, I'm proposing that you have maybe 5 slides. You have 1 slide per minute, that's pretty okay, okay? So 5 to 7 slides, and practicing with your friends and so on. Also interact with the audience. So on that day, I hope that you don't be just here, frozen in front of the people, with your hands in your pockets. You have to show some attitude, okay? And positive, not that bad attitude. The good one. The good one, you have to engage with the people. You have something, that brings to the attention of the public. Bring it up. Okay. I know that this is a short presentation, so it may not bring that issue, but sometimes happens. So this is a way, to practice those kind of things. Okay. And always eye contact. Okay. Don't talk to the roof, to the ceiling. Don't talk to the screen. Okay. Talk to the people. And sometimes I feel intimidated. I tell you, yeah, I've been teaching for many years, but sometimes some faces intimidate myself, intimidated too. But I try maybe to look at the, in the back, so you can see, sometimes I'll do this. I'm not seeing any of you. I'm looking at the back, okay? Or maybe because this room has, different TVs, screens, maybe you can talk with that TV. And one moment, maybe that one, maybe you can walk, But don't do things that distract too much from what you have to deliver, okay? Because the most important part is to deliver that message that is coming from the paper, okay? So what kind of papers I have? And I'm gonna send these papers to Antonio and also to Ricardo emails. I'm gonna give it later today, okay? So that your students can choose. So we have, I select seven of these papers without any order. There is just one copy for paper, but let me go through the papers, okay? I try to be, first of all, I select peer review. Peer review means that these researchers submit their findings to a group of colleagues that review it before it was approved for release, all right, in the scientific community. Then I figured out, there's gonna be papers related to the class, obviously, okay, related to energy. And then I thought, there's gonna be papers related to Europe, to India, because those are big players on energy. Maybe not today India, but for the future. There's gonna be some papers about Baja California, about Mexico, okay? That was my idea on this kind of paper. So there is a different kind. So number one is the importance of advancing technology to America's energy goals. So this is a policy type of paper. And all of these papers are not, it's not about the mathematics or the thermodynamics that are related to energy, are more kind of general concepts, you know, about this. So I guess it's not too difficult to digest, okay? So it's kind of plain language on this, but very important for us, you know, to move forward. So I just need the names of the groups and the paper that you are going to review, you are going to present.
Professor Jairo.
Yeah.
Can we choose number 5?
Oh, wow. Number 5. 5. Yeah, wind energy in the small communities in Ensenada. Okay, got it.
That's Michelle and Irving.
All right.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to send the paper later today, okay?
Okay, thank you very much.
Did you guys hear? So let's see. I'm gonna give you the PDF files too for me. But you can keep the copies. I hope not, because I have Evelyn and Elias that choose number 3. Number 5 was chosen by Ensenada. Choose 2. You can keep a copy. And I'm going to send it. What is your email address? Because I have access to web portal, but I don't see it. Maybe it's in Blackboard, but I didn't see it. Oh, you use that email? Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna email you this, and I think also gonna, because the other guys, you you put him on the Google Drive. You don't mind, because they need a Google Drive to share information. If that doesn't work, I can email you. I'm gonna let me do that this way. So I have, who's the next? I have 3. 5, 3, 2. Number 1. Number 1. Who is the number 1? Flavio. Don't think too much. Let's pick it up. So number 4. Number 4, 6, or 7? Oh, number 7 is. This is a lot of information. That's easy. That's a lot of information. I would like to learn about the 7. I'm doing this because I want to learn. Yeah. What do you want in there? Number 7. What is it, number 7? Bertone. So we have everyone here. Okay, so let me call the roster. We have Evelyn. Abril is not here. Flavio. Rafael. Oh, Gilberto. Gilberto is here. Alejandro is not. Gilberto is here. Andrew. No, Andrew is not. We have Javier. Yeah. Javier is here. Alejandra. You have everyone with that paper? Okay, so and again I'm gonna email you the PDF files, or he's gonna share with the Google Drive. Okay, you send me the links. I can post it so everyone can. I'm gonna give you the PDF files. No, because this one you have to have access to a university database. Yeah, but I have the PDF files already. What else? So next week, so be ready, 5 to 10 minutes presentation. So we have, so the one that missed the class today, maybe I'm just gonna let them to do the other papers, that's right? But okay, so be ready for a 5 to 10 minute presentation about that paper. It's a Microsoft PowerPoint. Bring it in a flash drive because we have to put it here in this computer. Okay?
By the way, is this
or
computer that you have here,
I don't know. I always bring my flash drive with the presentation of the data and put it here. Or you send it to my email, but it has to be early in the morning. Say by 10 in the morning. So I can, put it in my flash drive and bring it here. It's optional, okay? So that's for next week. Next week we're gonna have the presentations, and then we are gonna start talking about thermodynamics. So we are gonna do next week. Okay? Homework number one. I got a couple of emails. I have Evelyn, Rafael, Abril, and Michelle. So I'm still missing some of you guys.
we have it in
Oh, we are physical. I have also Elias. No. Okay. You're good. See you Tuesday, guys. Next week, right? Gracias. Okay, Ensenada, en Tijuana, ¿cómo están? ¿Bien?
Muy bien, gracias.
All right, so, pues,
Bien.
pues ya estamos ahí. Voy a enviarle la presentación y los papers más tarde, ¿les parece?
Sí, está bien, yo se los reenvío a Michelle y a Irving.
Y de Tijuana, pues, no sé, si la persona no apareció ya hoy, yo pienso que ya es como difícil que continúe.
Hijo.
No sé.
Voy a ver si lo puedo contactar el día de hoy, para ver si me responde el día de hoy para tratar de ponerlo
Sí,
correcto
quedar en
para la
clase.
semana que viene.
Clase.
Pero si no hay respuesta hoy, a más tardar mañana, yo creo que ya no,
Sí,
ya no se incorpora.
Ok, está bien. Sí, porque si no va a estar muy atrasada la persona. Ok, bye bye.
Efectivamente.
¿Está bien? Bueno, entonces ya terminamos ahí. Voy a grabar la presentación. Bueno, lo otro es que la persona puede ver todos los videos, ¿no?
Sí,
O
claro.
los estudiantes, ¿no? Pues yo estoy abierto a cualquier cosa, pero sí, no sé. yo estoy abierto a que vengan más estudiantes, a que participen, porque esa es la idea, ¿no? La primera vez que se enseña esta clase y pues creo que es una bonita oportunidad para todos nosotros, ¿sí? De participar y todo. Pero no sé. Pero bueno, me van avisando si Tijuana tiene algún estudiante para la próxima semana. ¿Está bien?
Claro que sí, doctor.
Ok, pues te agradezco la participación.
Al contrario, muchas gracias.
Bueno, que estén bien.
Bye, Jairo.
Gracias, gracias igual.
Bye bye.
Bye.